Fix 5. They took out the smoke. Now you can have a nice blaze without any clouds ruining your day. Go smokeless. Go to solostove.com. Tell them Big Snoop Dogg sent you.
What would you do if everyone said they heard your trailer 100 times? You'd probably make a new one. I'm Justin Sales, the host of The Wedding Scammer, The Ringer's first ever true crime pod. We've been hunting a con man for a few weeks now, and our hunt is coming to an end. Schemes, heartbreak, how to put on a wire. We've covered all this and more, but there are still a few surprises left. Binge The Wedding Scammer wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode of One Shining Podcast is presented by Simply Safe. Rudolph, you know the name. It's Christmas time, the greatest clutch performer in holiday history. But you know who else is there when you need them? Yes, that's right, Simply Safe. And they're helping protect you and your family from break-ins, fires, floods, and more with 24/7 professional monitoring. Right now, I am in North Carolina. I'm going back to Chapel Hill this weekend. I'm on a board, Kyle, officially. I'm on the alumni board, and I got to be out of town. But lucky for me, I have Simply Safe, so they're going to be monitoring my house, watching to make sure everyone is safe and nothing is going wrong in LA while I'm back in North Carolina. So shout out to our friends at Simply Safe. Right now, save up to 50% on any new system at simplysafe.com/shining. Again, if you got to go out of town, you got to go to a board meeting, you need Simply Safe at home to make sure you're safe. Again, it is simplysafe.com/shining.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. I love the holidays. I'll never forget when I was a kid, my dad, his brothers and sisters, they'd all get together.
The Bag, and The Ugly, and a Juwan Howard mystery with Kyle Mann. That is right, it is a Manic Monday. We're also going to talk about Arizona being the real #1, Purdue being tested in Toronto, some TJ Shannon thoughts, and the Miami panic button. We got a jam-packed show. It's going to be fun. Kyle is here on the ones and twos. Anything before we get into today's episode? I didn't want to mention Patino because, you know, that's a little too close to our hearts right now. What do we feel before we get into today's episode?
Great to be back. Love Kyle, man. Got a little pep in my step, not unlike Long Beach State. But first,
Woody Durham.
He takes the timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul.
Welcome back to One Shining Podcast. I'm your host, Tate Frazier. It is Monday, December 11th, which means it's a manic Monday. We got the good, we got the bad, we got the ugly. We're talking Bronny James, but first and foremost, Kyle Mann. Good to see you, brother.
good to see you too, Tate. I think the most important story is that we are so back. Headline, we are so back.
Yes.
Kyle's back from the East Coast. He journeyed over there via covered wagon. That's what he was telling me. It's slog. I'm just happy that we're all back together, man. That's what's got me thriving today.
Yeah, we were very worried. We had Kyle on the Friday show. I was worried that he was going to go start a bar in Poughkeepsie and leave us. My mother was also on top of this. She was like, Kyle did tell me that's exactly what he wanted to do. He was gone for 4 shows. More shows than he missed at the Bill Simmons podcast. So there was a lot of questions, more questions than answers. But right now we're all back and we're all happy. And, that means that we have to talk about something not so happy, which is Kenny Payne, P-A-I-N. Kenny Payne played DePaul this weekend, and it was the Toilet Bowl. It was the loser leaves town or state matchup, whatever you want to call it. It was the bottom of the barrel. These are the 2 worst teams in the net when it comes to power conference teams, talking about DePaul, talking about Louisville. And this one was actually like a DePaul statement, I guess, of sorts, which is basically like, we are actually not the bottom. It is Louisville. Let's start there with Kenny Payne because, my God, this was terrible. And so right now, Kenny Payne is 0-13 in road games at Louisville. He's 0-19 in games outside of Louisville, the city. And he's 8-33 overall. So that's just where we start right now. Louisville is a top 10 program perennially, but this is where we are in year 2. And I've had some people in the Louisville camp point out to me, Kyle Mann, that Rick Pitino lost his first 2 games against DePaul, just like Kenny Payne. So maybe there's a chance that he can turn this thing around. But how do you feel and what are you seeing? And it feels like it's almost over at this point.
Yeah, different times for Louisville, but, different times for DePaul also. This is not, Paul Reed ain't out there. Max Strus ain't out there. This is not a good DePaul team. This team is negative 10.9 in net rating on the, not the net that we malign and hate that we talked about last week.
Different net.
Yeah. And offense, defense, both ways, bad. They don't really do much of anything. You know, they don't really guard super well. So this was a game where, you know, U of L, you know, they historically have, hilariously to some extent back during their like prime Rick days, they celebrated DePaul Day. So I feel like this was insults. You know, this was, I don't know. You and I were kind of talking about trying to pinpoint like we could try to contextualize. You know, you said Rick lost his first 2 to DePaul. We can make up all kinds of like, you know, this is a slow start. But in the transfer portal era, you know, and at a school like U of L, and for a guy like Kenny Payne who has connections, you know, we've talked about, you know, I always thought that they would become a Jordan school whenever Kenny came. I thought they'd be super cool. The energy was great that spring when he took the job. In the transfer portal area with the connections that he has, you would think that they would have more talent than they do, and they do have a lot of talent. That's the thing, is like we keep acting like this is a bunch of bums. Like there are like 8 top 100 guys on this roster, man. It's like there's no real excuse for them to be, you know, maybe they're not great, but the energy's bad. Like I was on losing teams growing up. We played in a region with like a lot of good schools. We were the smallest school, got our asses kicked all the time. So my eyes for basketball depression are pretty sharp, and my radar's going off when I watch U of L. These guys, they're too talented to be this bad. That's kind of my read on it.
Yeah, they have 8 former top 100 recruits this season. Last season, they had 5 top 100 recruits, and they went 4 of 28 and 2 of 18 in conference play. Since COVID, if you want to blame something else outside of Kenny Payne, you can blame COVID. They are 34 and 59 since COVID began. They have been unranked for 32 straight weeks, and they're 16 and 38 in the ACC since COVID started. And they've only had 1 NBA draft pick. So at least when you're at the bottom of the barrel, sometimes you would expect Kenny Payne to at least have 1 guy on the team that's going to be, you know, close to the lottery, fringe lottery guy. At least you have some sort of optimism. You're like, we have an NBA guy on our roster. They have nothing to really point to and get excited about. And now you're at the point where you lose to DePaul, which is embarrassing enough. But now the fan base, I mean, there was infighting. There were some people saying you have to give Kenny more time. But these press conferences that he has had throughout the years, whether it's the Tyler Johnson with the tights, or, you know, talking about he was shocked that Mike Woodson, you know, ran zone. He was surprised by it, right? He's had all these moments in the press conferences where you're like, Kenny, come on. This can't be the answer. This can't be what you're saying right now. And if you look at his buyout, it was $10 million before the end of March. Now it's $8 million. Louisville has a lot of money. Louisville can buy out $8 million like it's nothing. I mean, they could do that if it was a baseball coach. I mean, this is a nothing burger type buyout deal. Like, they can get rid of Kenny Payne pretty quickly, which is why I asked you the question, Kyle, man. Does he make it to 2024? The last game of 2023 is December 21st against your Kentucky Wildcats. I feel like if John Calipari and Dillingham and Reed Shepherd and all these young guys go out there and have a field day running up and down the court, dunking all over the place, that could be the last time we see Kenny Payne at Louisville.
No, if they get out, I think U of L will get up for that game. We've seen them get up for a couple games, and you know, it's a team that draws fouls well. If you want to have one like nice thing to point to, Cal's not going to embarrass Kenny Payne, especially not in this situation. If Kentucky does play well and they come in and jump on them, Cal's going to go to his infamous circle offense where he takes the air. He'll take it out. He'll take it out at the beginning of the second half. He's not going to embarrass